What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Martian MMA podcast. I am your host, and my name is John. And this week we are back with episode 85, where we will be analyzing and predicting this weekend's upcoming UFC card, headlined by Alistair Overeem versus Jandiroba-Martin. This 12-fight card will take place in Washington, D.C., with the first 3 fights taking place on ESPN Plus at 5:30 p.m., with the next 4 fights taking place on ESPN, the TV channel, at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And finally, the 5-fight main card will air on ESPN as well at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. So a bit of a weird start time to this card, and it's the first UFC card in about 2 weeks. And this is also right around the 2-year anniversary of the Martian MMA podcast. So I just want to give a quick shout out to everybody who listens one time or weekly. I appreciate each and every one of you, and thank you for continuing to support the podcast. And with that being said, we're going to jump right into the first fight on this card, which will be in the middleweight division. We have Trevor Smith, who is 15-9, taking on Wiman-Soleck, who is 23-6. The opening betting line for this one was Muradov, the favorite, at -260 to Smith at +200. Right now we are seeing heavy action come in on Muradov. He is now -420 to Smith at +335. And I'm not totally surprised at where the initial line was set, but where it's at now is honestly pretty steep, and I think it's actually a little, it's way too in favor of Muradov. I think this is a definite dog or pass fight where it's at now, and I mean, I was somewhat impressed with Muradov in his UFC debut. He defeated Alessio Di Chirico by decision. He won rounds 1 and 2 pretty decisively, but I think he slowed down a little bit in round 3, maybe even lost round 3. Got hit with some pretty big punches, and ADC was gaining some momentum at the end of that round. But I think Muradov came into that fight on a short notice, and he's riding a big win streak right now. He's got some decent striking. He's an orthodox striker. I wasn't really impressed with his striking. I mean, he was kind of coming in and out a lot versus ADC, and he wasn't really having like a lot of success with his striking. And he looked kind of defensive liability as well. It looked like his chin could be touched by a better puncher, and his wrestling, he didn't really get to show in that fight. He really relied on his wrestling a lot in his regional fights, and he didn't really get his wrestling game going versus Alessio Di Chirico. And I don't think he's going to be really able to get it going versus Trevor Smith as well, because Trevor Smith doesn't have the greatest record. He's on a bit of a losing streak, but I mean, he's a pretty solid fighter, and he's got pretty good takedown defense as well. He's fought some decent wrestlers throughout his career, 12 fights in the UFC, and he's only been taken down 2 times, and he stuffed some decent takedowns versus Zach Cummings last fight. He looked pretty poor in that fight. I mean, the first 2 rounds he definitely lost, but in round 3 he found a way to get in top position on the ground, and Smith's got some decent boxing technique, and I mean, he doesn't really look like a totally shot fighter. So I mean, he's a pretty well-rounded fighter with some decent boxing and good takedown defense. So I honestly think that that's good enough to compete with Muradov. I'm not going to go ahead and pick Smith to win. The pick is still going to be Muradov in this one, but I think it's going to be a much closer fight than the odds indicate. And I think the people that are laying that heavy chalk on Muradov are a bit crazy, honestly, because I don't think he really deserves it after that one and only fight in the UFC so far. So I'm going to pick this fight to be closer, maybe 29-28, and I'm going to go with Muradov to get that decision. The next fight takes place in the women's strawweight division. We have Virna Jandiroba, who is 14-1, taking on Mallory Martin, who is 6-2. The opening betting line for this one was Jandiroba, the favorite, at -155 to Martin, the +115 underdog. Since then, some heavy action coming in on the favorite Jandiroba, now -275 to Martin at +235. So I kind of understand why the action came in on Jandiroba. She does seem to be the more complete mixed martial artist, definitely the better grappler of the two, and I think that that's where this fight will likely play out. But Martin's coming in on this fight short notice. She has been fighting and beating some pretty decent competition over in Invicta, and she, I think, deserves this spot in the UFC. So it's nice to see she's getting in the UFC, but they gave her a pretty stiff test, especially on short notice. But I think she'll be up for the test, honestly. I mean, it's not like Jandiroba is that overwhelming of a fighter. And they're both kind of similar. I mean, both of their strikings are pretty ugly, you know. The difference between the two is I think that Martin thinks her striking is a little better than it is. You know, she tries to throw too much, and she has sloppy punching technique, and she tries to throw in combination, but she just doesn't have the footwork to do it. And Jandiroba, I think, kind of knows her striking isn't good, and she keeps it real basic. So I think that, well, we'll see maybe Martin to try to keep this fight standing and maybe stuff the takedowns to Jandiroba. I don't think she'll have success with that because Jandiroba has some pretty good takedowns. She was able to take down Esparza a few times in their fight, but wasn't able to get any top control on Esparza. But Esparza's got, a great get-up game. She's got a great wrestling base, and it's a much different opponent than Mallory Martin. Martin does have a pretty good ground game, though. I think that that's where she does some of her best work is from top position on the ground. But it's just going to be super, super hard for her to get and remain top position on Jandiroba because Jandiroba is just really good off her back. She's a jiu-jitsu black belt. She's got really good sweeps from half guard, and her butterfly guard sweeps are really good too. So if she gets put on her back at any point, I think that she'll use those half guard, that deep half guard, or that butterfly to get back up to her feet, or to just reverse position on Martin and maybe put Martin on her back, where I don't think Martin is as good. Definitely not as good. So it should be a close fight, honestly. I think that Martin's up for the test, and I don't think Jandiroba is that dominant to the point where she's, minus 300 now or something like that, minus 270. I think that the people who came in early on Jandiroba at under 2-1, that's a good bet, but over 2-1, man, I don't think that you can be confident that Jandiroba wins this fight like 70% of the time. That's just a little too high for me. I think there's some better spots on the card, and there's a little too much variability in this fight for me. So the pick is going to be Jandiroba to win by decision, possibly even submission, honestly. But I think that Mallory Martin will honestly put up a good fight and might make this fight a little bit closer than it seems, than the odds seem. So the pick is going to be Jandiroba by decision. The next fight is in the lightweight division. We have Matt Wiman, who is 16-8, taking on Joe Solecki, who is 8-2. The opening betting line for this one was Solecki, the favorite, at minus 180 to Wiman at plus 150. Right now we are seeing Solecki minus 330 to Wiman at plus 270. So the more action coming in on the favorite, Solecki, again, the third fight in a row where the heavy action is coming in on the favorite. And another warranted spot here. I mean, Solecki has looked pretty impressive so far from what I've seen of him. On the Contender Series, he looked pretty slick. And, Wiman is just, it's sad to see this guy fight, honestly, because even 4 or 5 years ago, he wasn't that an elite of a fighter, and now he came back last fight versus Luis Pena, and man, he took the beatdown of the year last fight. I mean, if you look at this guy's picture on Tapology and you look at him now, I mean, the guy looks totally different. He just doesn't look physically strong anymore. He looks like he's really aged poorly. His jiu-jitsu did not, I mean, he's really jiu-jitsu or bust, and his jiu-jitsu didn't even look that good versus Pena. I mean, he was desperately grabbing ankles and leg locks, and he was just getting smashed from top position. Luis Pena is not that dominant of opponent. Pena looked like a world beater versus him. It was a sustained, 11-minute beatdown from Pena in that fight, and Wiman just looked terrible on the feet. He got smashed with knees in the clinch, and he got cut and was bleeding a lot. He couldn't get off his back. He was attempting bad submissions, and it's just going to be a really bad fight for him versus Solecki here because Wyman's specialty is his jiu-jitsu, and I mean, he's taken on a really good jiu-jitsu fighter in Solecki. Most of Solecki's wins have come by way of submission, and I think that he does have some pretty decent striking as well. I'm confident that he will outstrike Wiman on the feet as well as the ground when it gets there. Even though we haven't seen much footage of Solecki striking, there's kind of limited footage of him throughout his career, only a few fights on the internet. But the guys, you can definitely see is he's got a really talented ground game, should be a lot better than Wyman's. And from the small glimpses of the striking, I think that he should be able to win the striking as well. So that's why you're seeing that heavy action come in on Solecki, and I think Solecki is probably the safest pick on this card. Now, I'm not saying I would bet him at minus 330 or anything, but because he is a debuting fighter, and we have not seen him on that UFC octagon yet, but I'm really confident Solecki wins this one, and it's probably going to be by submission, and hopefully it's not another ugly beatdown like last fight. The next fight takes place in the featherweight division, where we have Bryce Mitchell, who is 11-0, taking on Mitchell-Sayles, who is 8-2. The opening betting line for this one was Mitchell, the minus 185 favorite, to Sayles at plus 160. Right now we are seeing the line flipped. Now Sayles minus 125, Mitchell plus 105. Wow. So I think this might be my first time seeing this. I remember Mitchell being the favorite earlier in this week, and now he's jumped all the way up to the underdog. So heavy action coming in on Matt Sayles in this one, and it's a bit confusing. I mean, I understand coming in a little bit. Maybe I think plus 130 would be an appropriate line for Sayles, but he's all the way down to minus 125. It's a really surprising line. And I say that because, I mean, if you look at Matt Sayles' last fight, I mean, he struggled getting a guy like Kyle Nelson out of there. He had some bad moments where he got stuck on bottom. He gave up his back. He almost got submitted a few times. And that's just not what you want to see against a scrappy grappler like Bryce Mitchell. I mean, Bryce Mitchell fought Bobby Moffett and had a really close grappling fight with him. And it really just came down to Mitchell scrambling out of the positions at the right time and getting top position when it really mattered. Like, he could have lost round 3, potentially getting stuck on bottom, but he slipped out right at the last second. He escaped the back take, and then he got top position for the end of the round and ended the round with his own back take. So, I mean, he's just really good defensively grappling. He's hard to submit, and I mean, he's just a really scrappy fighter. He likes getting takedowns. He doesn't have the best takedown defense himself, Mitchell, but neither does Sayles. Both of these guys don't really have great takedown defense, and both really like working for top position. So it really should be a close, fun fight. I'm really looking forward to it. I think on the feet, Sayles is the better fighter. He's light on his feet, orthodox fighter. He's got pretty technical boxing. I mean, I was impressed with the guy's striking. Even in his most recent loss against Stamman-Yadong, it was a good performance. They were close first 2 rounds that he lost, and then he came back and won round 3. So Sayles is making big improvements, and Mitchell is as well. You can see the fight-to-fight improvements he's made over the course of his time in the Ultimate Fighter, and him making his way up to the Nashville card a few months back and really putting on a big performance in that fight and coming up big. So it's a really close fight, and I just slightly lean Mitchell because I think that he's a little bit better from top position. He's hard to hold down on the mat, and I just think that Sayles' takedown defense is not going to be good enough to stop Mitchell's takedowns, and I think that he's not going to have the defensive grappling and the scrambling ability to get out of Mitchell's control. So I think that Mitchell will get the takedowns. He will likely hold him down, possibly see some back takes in there, maybe even a submission from Mitchell along the way. So I'm going to slightly lead towards Mitchell in this one, but it's a really close fight. I mean, I like the plus money on Mitchell, but I'm a little bit worried about Mitchell gassing out a little bit in the later rounds. Sayles has really good cardio in the later rounds, and Mitchell does not. He got taken down and spent a lot of time on bottom versus Tyler Diamond and Bobby Moffett. But I think 2 fights in a row where he kind of struggled with his cardio in round 3. Meanwhile, Sayles, 2 fights in a row, came on strong at the end of round 3 after losing versus Marias. And he finished Nelson in round 3 last time in his last fight. So if you think that the fight is looking a little bit close and you see Mitchell maybe winning rounds 1 and 2 and you get a little bit worried about your bets, you know, a live bet hedge will not be the worst option in this one because Sayles could possibly come back and make this fight either steal the decision, make the fight a draw or something like that in round 3. So be aware of that. Bet this one with caution. I think it should be a really good fight. I haven't locked in a bet on it yet. I might just sit back and enjoy this one, but as of now, the pick is going to be Mitchell to win by decision. The next fight takes place in the featherweight division. We have Jacob Killburn, who is 8-2, taking on Billy Quarantillo, who is 12-2. The opening betting line for this one is Quarantillo, the minus 230 favorite, to Killburn plus 170. Right now, we are seeing Quarantillo minus 335 to Killburn plus 275. So heavy action coming in on Billy Q. That's what I'm going to go with calling him instead of the whole Quarantillo. So, these guys both fall in the contender series, and Quarantillo had a really impressive performance, getting a finished victory. Didn't look incredible in that fight. He did get taken down. He got stuck on bottom. He lost round 1 pretty decisively versus Camilla Kirk in that one. And then came back in round 2, started outstriking him, stuffing takedowns, and really put a beat down on him for like 3 or 4 minutes before the ref stopped it. But I mean, I was kind of unimpressed with his power. He had he had him hurt for he had Kirk hurt really bad in round 2, and Kirk was gassed out. He couldn't get takedowns, and Quarantillo was landing punches at will, and he just couldn't finish him. It took him a really long time, and even at the end of the fight, it's not like he knocked him out cold. It was a referee stoppage. So, and I'm seeing that in a lot of his fights. He's got some late finishes. He's got some stoppages by strikes and some stoppages in between rounds. So I would like to see a little bit more knockout power from him, because he's facing a really aggressive guy in Killburn. Killburn usually comes out really aggressive, and his fight on the Contender Series was actually against Bobby Moffitt, who we were just talking about a little bit ago, and he got taken down, he got passed, he got mounted, he got stuck on his back for really like I think 4 minutes or something like that in that fight. And then in round 2, he fought with a big ego. He got hit with a head kick, and then he like kind of gave him this look like, oh, you want to head kick me? I'll head kick you back. And literally the second he threw a spinning head kick, he got taken down and tapped out right away. I mean, he kind of fights with a bit of an ego. Like if you punch him, he's going to try to swing back and punch you back. So I think that's it's going to be a bad strategy in this fight, definitely, because I think Quarantillo is the better striker. But I mean, Killburn's got knockout power, man. I've seen a couple videos of him just knocking dudes dead. I mean, he knocked one dude out with an overhand right, and he knocked his last opponent out with a lead left hook. I mean, so he's knocked people out with both hands, and I'm talking like knocked out stiff. So there's no doubt that Killburn has the power advantage in this fight, and I honestly think that we could see an early knockout from either guy in this one. I mean, they're both making their UFC debuts. They both are a bit unexperienced, and I think that they could just come out swinging in this one and just be that style matchup and just maybe banging out, and one of these guys will fall. So if someone's getting the first round finish, I think it'll be Killburn. But if someone's getting a second or third round finish, I definitely think it'll be Quarantillo. So I think Quarantillo is, I mean, I don't think either of these guys are going to look to take this fight to the floor. Both of them kind of struggle with their takedown defense and their defensive grappling. So I think we'll see him banging out on the feet. And I just think that Quarantillo has the better output, the more diverse offense, and a little bit better defense than Killburn as well. So I think that Quarantillo avoids that power knockout punch of Killburn, and Quarantillo eventually gets the finish. But where the line is at now, I think that it's a little too steep for Quarantillo at this point. I think even maybe a bet on Killburn by knockout is actually a pretty good bet, plus 750. I think that's the most common way he wins this fight. So the pick is going to be Quarantillo to get it done by, let's go with a third round stoppage. The next fight takes place in the welterweight division. We have Thiago Alves, who is 23-14, taking on Tim Means, who is 28-11-1. The opening betting line in this one was Means the favorite at -160, with Alves coming back at +130. Right now we are seeing Means -265 to Alves at +225. So the action coming in on Means in this one, I understand the action. I'm honestly surprised this isn't more of a favorite situation. We got two grizzled veterans in this one. Alves is more of a kickboxer, likes throwing leg kicks, and his offense is just so predictable at this point. I think that's honestly his biggest detriment. And then Means is more of a boxer. I mean, all he really does is box, throws the occasional kick or something like that, and he does have a good ground game, but at this point in his career, he seems mostly content to box, and I think that's definitely what he's going to do in this fight. He's going to have a 5-inch reach advantage and a height advantage over Alves. He's going to have that southpaw versus orthodox matchup going on, and Means' boxing is really good, man. He's got some of the most technical boxing in the UFC, although he did get knocked out in his last fight. He was winning that fight pretty decisively. He was landing punches at will on Nico Price, and then he just got knocked out cold by that right hand by Price in that one. It was a nasty knockout too. He fell on his ankle, broke his own ankle with his body weight coming on top of it. Just nasty knockout. And he's taking a lot of time off, and he's coming back in this fight, and it's a pretty good matchup for him too, because Alves isn't totally shot. I mean, he's looked okay versus Staropoli, okay versus Kunchenko, maybe even won that Kunchenko fight. But as we've seen recently, Kunchenko is not what we all thought he was, and Staropoli also lost pretty recently too. So both of those losses look a little bit worse now that the guys who beat him are coming off of losses. So I just don't think Alves is going to be quick enough. I don't think his offense has enough to offer to confuse Means, and I think the Means will probably just outstrike, outbox Alves in this one, and possibly even land that knockout. And it could get ugly because Alves was getting busted up a little bit versus Staropoli, so I honestly think the Means should probably do some pretty nasty damage. So the pick in this one is going to be Means to get a knockout. I'm going to go with first round. I think he gets him out of there quick with that straight left hand. Moving on to the main card, the first fight on the main card in the bantamweight division, we have Rob Font, who is 16-4, taking on Ricky Simón, who is 15-2. The opening betting line for this one was Font, the -160 favorite, to Simón +130. Right now, we are seeing Font -140, Simón +120. So two-way action coming in on this fight. Really close fight. I'm really looking forward to this one. It should be a lot of fun. And I honestly am a bit surprised that Simón is the underdog in this one, because Font has notoriously not really had great takedown defense. If we look back, he got taken down by Douglas Silva de Andrade, not a wrestler. He got taken down by Sun Tzu, who's not a traditional wrestler, but does have really good takedowns. So that fight was last July versus a Sun Tzu, but if you watch the way the Font got double-legged in that fight, I just don't see any way how he could beat Simón with that same type of takedown defense. Maybe he's worked on it a lot since then. I mean, it's entirely possible. The guy is improving a lot. He picked up a great win over Sergio Pettis last fight. Supposed to fight John Lineker pretty recently, but the fight got canceled like a day or two before, so we haven't seen Font in action too much. Maybe he has been working on his takedown defense this entire time, and he is going to have the takedown defense to scramble out of Simón's takedowns. I just don't see it. I mean, at range, Font's going to be the better striker, no doubt. The dude's got a great jab. He's got good boxing fundamentals, good defense, and then he's working on his offensive grappling game as well. He was showing that a little bit versus Sergio Pettis, but he's not going to be doing that versus Simón. Simón's got incredible scrambles, great takedown defense. He's hard to hold down. You saw that in the Dvalishvili fight, and he can hit takedowns on bigger opponents. I mean, Montel Jackson, Simón dominated him. Simón, out-pressured, outboxed Hani Yahya, and Simón did get caught with that overhand right knocked out versus Uriah Faber last fight, which is definitely not going to. It's definitely a bad loss. I mean, you don't want that loss on your record with Uriah Faber coming back from retirement to knock you out. And on the feet, Font probably has the power to knock Simón out if this fight stays on the feet for long periods of time. So Simón's going to need takedowns to win, but I think he does get them. I think he's going to be pressuring Font. He's going to be getting those takedowns. Font will probably get up, and Simón's going to drag him back down. Simón doesn't really have great top control, but he's going to be getting a lot of takedowns. I mean, this guy's had double-digit takedowns in fights before, I'm sure. So he's going to be coming in here to get multiple takedowns to keep dragging Font back down to the mat and make it a really grueling, grinding type of fight in the clinch and in the takedowns. So I think Simón wins this one, and I have not locked in a bet on him yet, but if he stays at this plus money closer to fight day, I will definitely lock in some action on Simón in this one. So the pick is going to be Simón to win by decision. The next fight takes place in the bantamweight division. We have Cody Stamman, who is 18-2, taking on Song Yadong, who is 15-4. The opening betting line for this one was Yadong, the favorite, at -145, to Stamman at +115. Right now, we are seeing Yadong -200 to Stamman +170. So more action coming in on Song Yadong, and I understand why, man. This guy is like a blue chip prospect at this point. Seriously, one of the best prospects in the UFC. And I mean, I don't even know if you can call him that anymore, prospect, because he's been in the UFC for a few years now. He's picked up some decent wins. I mean, I think he's like 4-0 or something like that. And his last performance was by far his most impressive. I mean, he completely starched Alejandro Perez, knocked him out cold on pay-per-view too. I mean, I don't think it was on the main card portion of the pay-per-view, but nonetheless, he made his name that night. And I'm honestly surprised he's not more of a favorite in this one, because he's training out of Team Alpha Male, a great camp, a lot of good training partners, a lot of guys that are good matchups or good similar styles to Stamman. He's probably been working on his takedown defense like crazy, on his get-up game, and he's going to have to do that, because I think that's his only chance at winning this fight. If Stamman doesn't hit takedowns, he will likely get outstruck and possibly even knocked out, because Yadong has got super fast striking. His boxing is crisp, accurate. Counter striking is on point, and he does have the ability to stuff takedowns. He has good offensive grappling himself. I mean, Felipe Arantes, Yadong dominated him on the mat in that one. I think Arantes might be a black belt, and then eventually Yadong was able to land an elbow in the clinch and just knock out Orantes as well. So, I mean, he's really good. I mean, the guy throws with power. He's fast. He's accurate. I mean, can't say enough about Song Yadong. And the only really negative thing about him, I would say, is that his offense is a bit limited. Like, you don't see him throwing a lot of spinning stuff or trying to throw combinations too much. I mean, he has a few tools that he likes, and he sticks with them. He trusts them. And, I mean, what can you say about it? I mean, it's working really great. And he is 4-0 in the UFC so far. I did confirm that. And Stammen, I think he's been looking a little bit maybe declining a little bit. That last fight versus Alejandro Perez, the same guy who Yadong just fought. I mean, Yadong starched him, knocked him out cold. Stammen had a bit of a close fight with him. I mean, Stammen struggled taking him down. Perez does have a good wrestling background and great takedown defense, but Stammen went 0 for 8 on takedowns that fight. Really struggled taking him down, but luckily he was able to just outstrike him on the feet in that one. But Stammen's striking is pretty basic. I mean, he's got that classic wrestle boxer kind of style. I mean, he doesn't fight going backwards very well. That's his biggest problem. So if Yadong pressures him and is looking for counter strikes, I think he will likely outstrike Stammen and possibly lead into that knockout. So Stammen's going to be looking for takedowns. I don't think he gets him. I mean, he will probably get Yadong down, but I think Yadong will get his way back to his feet because Stammen's top control is not very good. He was able to take Aljamain Sterling down a few times, a great wrestler, but was never able to control him. But Yadong's get-ups and his bottom game is nowhere near as good as Sterling. So if Stammen does get Yadong flat on his back, gets top position, it'll get interesting. I mean, he could win the fight that way. So if Stammen is able to get takedowns and get top position, he probably will win a decision. I don't see it happening, though. I see Yadong stuffing takedowns, getting up off of his back if he gets taken down, and outstriking Stammen. I don't think he'll win this one by knockout. I think Yadong wins this one by decision. The next fight takes place in the women's bantamweight division. We have Aspen Ladd, who is 8-1, taking on Ladd-Kunitskaya, who is 12-4. The opening betting line for this one was Ladd, the favorite, at -165 to Kunitskaya +135. Right now, we are seeing Ladd -150, Kunitskaya +130. So Interesting. Aspen Ladd, if this fight was 6 months ago, we would have seen Aspen Ladd -300, -400. I mean, she was just -150 over Germaine de Randamie, and Germaine floored her in 15 seconds with the right hand, one of the quickest knockouts in women's MMA history. So, I mean, Aspen Ladd, I think, has been notoriously overrated in the betting lines. Seriously, like one of the most overrated fighters in the UFC right now. I mean, the fact that she's on another main card is kind of hilarious. And, Kunitskaya is not really good either. I mean, this fight's going to be ugly. I mean, anybody who's betting this fight, I think you should take a long, hard look in the mirror before you lock in that bet on this one. Because, I mean, I thought about betting Ladd in this one. I think that she's definitely the value side. But, man, like I said, do I really want to put my money on this fight? It's going to be painful to watch. It's going to be sloppy. I mean, both of these women don't have great technique. On the feet, they're both super sloppy. Kunitskaya is slightly better. I mean, she has kicks. She has a decent clinch game. She has a little bit of kickboxing to her, but Ladd just kind of walks forward and wings punches. She really has no defense, really inaccurate striking. I mean, she was throwing out lazy jabs versus Germaine de Randamie and acting like Germaine wasn't an expert kickboxer, and it took Germaine de Randamie 10 seconds to time her jab, land an overhand right, and knock her out. I mean, it's just the most basic striking you can ever imagine. So maybe Ladd has started making some improvements, but with how soon she's coming back from this one, I don't think she's making improvements. I mean, that knockout was like 4 or 5 months ago. She's probably going to come in here the same fighter as she did versus Germaine. But I still think that's good enough to beat Kunitskaya because Ladd is good from top position. When she can hit takedowns, her wrestling's not good, but when she can hit takedowns, she is good from top position. I mean, she kept Sijara Eubanks on her back, pretty much 10-8'd her in round 2 of that fight, and was threatening with submissions, taking her back, mounting her. So she's got a good top game, and I think that she probably will take Kunitskaya down and probably will get top position on her to win a decision. But I mean, Kunitskaya, I think that she will win this fight at range, and I think that Kunitskaya will win it in the clinch. I mean, Ladd struggled in the clinch a lot versus Lena Landsberg. and maybe even lost round 1 versus Landsberg, just getting kneed in the stomach, just trying to get taken down. Eventually, Ladd got the takedown in round 2 and really went to work with her ground and pound. So I think that this is I'll reiterate it one more time, a sloppy fight. It's going to be risky. There's not much more else to say about this one, although just bet very, very carefully in this one. I'm going to pick Ladd to win by decision. Not a super confident pick, but I think the value side is slightly on Ladd in this one. Moving on to the next fight in the heavyweight division, we have Stefan Struve, who is 29-11, taking on Ben Rothwell, who is 36-12. The opening betting line for this one was Rothwell, the -145 favorite, to Struve +115. Right now we are seeing Rothwell -140, Struve +120. So two-weight action in this fight, and man, another pretty wacky matchup, honestly. I mean, we got two super old heavyweights. They're both declining. I'd say they're already declined. I don't know if they can decline much more, but I mean, Struve won his last fight versus Marcos de Lima. Just a complete meme fight. He got knocked down in the first 10 seconds. He got stuck on his back for 4 minutes and 50 seconds versus de Lima, and then he took in second round. He took down de Lima with some sloppy wizard throw. Gets him on his back, passes him, mounts him, and arm triangles him. I mean, it was a crazy comeback for sure, but I mean, it's just how bad de Lima is as an opponent. Meanwhile, Rothwell's last fight was also pretty ugly, man. The dude ate 150 punches to the mouth versus Andrei Arlovsky. I mean, he made Arlovsky look like Lomachenko out there. So, bad performance from Rothwell. He got completely outboxed, took a lot of damage in that fight, and just did not look good. But the fight before that versus Ivanov was actually a pretty good performance. I mean, Ivanov's a legitimate heavyweight. He is good at winning decisions, and I think Rothwell actually won that decision from him. The judges disagreed and gave it to Ivanov, which was pretty highly regarded as a bad decision. But, what are you going to do? Those happen in our sport. But I still think Rothwell is just a much fresher fighter. At range, we have not seen Stefan Struve look good in a while, multiple years, honestly. I mean, he's super tall, lanky, doesn't know how to use his reach, doesn't have good defense, doesn't know how to throw a jab. And like I said, he got dropped in the first 5 seconds versus de Lima by a glancing punch. So I think that if the Rothwell who fought Ivanov shows up, he's definitely going to win this one. I mean, even the Rothwell who showed up and got his ass whooped by Arlovsky might beat Struve, because Rothwell's not easy to take down. He's got a good front choke that's a really good weapon for deterring takedowns. And I mean, I really don't see Struve shooting on him for sure. I mean, he's not going to. Maybe he'll get a trip takedown from the clinch or something like that. That would be pretty bad. But unless Struve gets top position on the ground in this one, I don't see him winning. He could get that trip takedown I was just talking about. Struve does do some decent work from the clinch, and that's kind of how he got de Lima down. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think that Rothwell is able to avoid getting stuck on his back, is able to avoid any takedown attempts, and he's probably just going to butcher Struve at range, possibly even getting the finish in this one. Originally, I liked the fight goes the distance at plus money in this one, but I mean, you're trusting Stefan Struve's chin, and that's just a hard thing to trust at this point. So honestly, I think the best bet in this one is Rothwell money line -140. That's pretty cash, honestly. I think he wins this fight 7 times out of 10. I'd cap him more around -220, -250. So I'd say Rothwell's a pretty good bet, and I'm going to lock in some action on him any day now. So the pick for that one is going to be Rothwell by decision. The next fight is the co-main event of the evening. We have Cynthia Calvillo, who is 8-1, taking on Marina Rodriguez, who is 12-0-1. The opening betting line for this one was Calvillo, the -140 favorite, to Rodriguez +110. Right now, we are seeing Rodriguez, the favorite, at -125 to Calvillo +105. So a slight line flip in this one, and interesting fight, man. I mean, I agree with the action flipping the line on Rodriguez in this one. I think Rodriguez is the one who deserves to be the favorite. And that's because I think Calvillo needs to get this fight to the floor to win. I mean, her takedowns aren't really very good. She struggled taking Casey Kenny down a little bit, although she didn't pursue takedowns that hard in that fight. But I just think that Calvillo, beat some lower-level grapplers and lower-level fighters early on in her UFC career, and then started struggling when she started fighting a little bit better fighters. And I think that Rodriguez might be one of the best opponents she's fought yet, besides Carlos Barza, of course. But I mean, Rodriguez is making huge improvements, and I mean, her first UFC fight was a draw versus Randa Marcos, but I mean, even since then, she's made big improvements, and especially in her takedown defense, man. I mean, that fight was just about a year ago versus Marcos. She got taken down and stuck on her back, lost round one pretty decisively in that one, and all of a sudden versus Tecia Torres, she's stuffing takedowns. She's showing great takedown defense. She's using her clinch to stuff takedowns. I mean, Rodriguez is getting a lot better. And on the feet, she's got great Muay Thai skills. I mean, she does good work in the clinch. She comes from that Muay Thai background. You can see it in her stance. She throws good straight punches. She's got good kicks at range, a good front kick. And I'm really impressed with Rodriguez in general. And if you can tell by the way I'm talking about her, I mean, I think she's winning this fight. I do. I think at range, Rodriguez is going to butcher Calvillo. And on the same thing, the clinch is going to be the worst. I think Rodriguez has a good chance at cutting Calvillo with some elbows in the clinch, landing some hard knees to the body, sucking that gas tank out. And, I mean, people don't realize how effective the clinch is. And when you can get a good clinch on someone and land a couple good knees to the body, that could be the fight right there. You could take their gas tank out and nothing could be the same. And I mean, she really did that versus Tecia Torres. Torres would shoot, Rodriguez would stuff it, and then she would land hard strikes in the clinch to make her pay for it. And she dominated Torres in that fight. So she really showed how good she is the last fight versus Torres. And I think that I think that Calvillo has been a bit overrated throughout her career. Her striking isn't very good. It's kind of choppy, and she's good in top position. She's got some good ground and pound, good submission skills, but I'm just not impressed enough with her wrestling to think that she's going to take Rodriguez down here. So I think Rodriguez keeps the fight at range, outstrikes Calvillo while it's there, stuff the takedowns, does good work in the clinch. If she gets taken down, I think that she will pop back up to her feet, but the only instance I see Calvillo winning this fight is getting Rodriguez flat on her back, flattening her shoulders out, and maybe passing mount and submitting her or something like that. But I don't see it happening. I honestly think that there's like a 30% chance that Calvillo wins this fight. So I'd cap Rodriguez as more of a minus 200 or so favorite. And I think, I mean, name recognition aside, that's what this is. I mean, I think Calvillo picked up a couple good wins. Her name is kind of known at this point in the MMA community. She trains out of a bigger camp. Rodriguez is kind of a lesser known Brazilian woman, not as much popularity in the sport. And I think that's why Calvillo is being overrated. I honestly cap Rodriguez minus 200 in this one. So I'm picking Rodriguez to win this one by decision, and we could even see a late stoppage from like a cut or something in this one. So the pick is Rodriguez, and I'm pretty confident in her. We'll probably end up on her money line. And in the final fight of the card, in the main event of the evening, we have in the heavyweight division, we have Alistair Overeem, who is 45-17, taking on Jandiroba-Martin, who is 9-0. The opening betting line for this one is Alistair Overeem was the favorite at minus 135 to Rozenstruik, the slight plus 105 underdog. Right now, we are seeing Overeem minus 115, Rozenstruik minus 105. So, two-way action coming in all over this fight. This is a really interesting fight. It's a short notice fight because Alistair Overeem was supposed to fight Walt Harris on this card, but Rozenstruik is stepping in for Harris. So, Rozenstruik was taking the fight on short notice, but I mean, he was just fighting Andrei Arlovski not too long ago. But I mean, Rozenstruik, man, what a puzzling character this guy is. I mean, who does anybody know how good this guy is? Because I mean, I really don't think you can be confident if you know that he's good. I mean, we've seen him win 3 fights in the UFC in about like 6 or 7 minutes time total, and we've seen him get taken down, stuck on his back, show awful jiu-jitsu skills, and then we've seen him get like 3 quick knockouts over people as well. So I mean, who really knows what to think of the guy? I mean, it seems like he's got some pretty good power in his hands to start, but I mean, against super low level competition in Albini and Crowder, and then I mean that knockout against Arlovski I guess was impressive because Arlovski hadn't been knocked out in like 10 heavyweight fights before that, but it was just a weird shot. I mean, it was a beautiful punch by Rozenstruik, that left hook, but I mean, just a really weird fight. Guys get knocked out in the first 30 seconds, minute like that all the time, and it's just, I mean, I don't think guys are truly in the fight yet, and that might have been happening to Arlovski. So I mean, if we're talking skill for skill, Alistair Overeem is just miles ahead of Rozenstruik. And I'm not, even in the striking, even though Rozenstruik's a former kickboxer, he's been kickboxing more recently than Overeem is. Overeem's technique, everything about him is better. His striking is better adapted for MMA. He's got the better cardio. He's got the better clinch game for sure. I think that's going to be a huge factor in this fight is Alistair Overeem's clinch game, because he's really used that clinch in his past 2 fights. Whenever Pavlovich would swing big heavy bombs at him, he'd clinch him up, land some knees, separate, and then he eventually landed that takedown and smashed Pavlovich from top position and getting the knockout on that one. And in the fight versus Alexei Oleinik, he used the clinch, smashed Oleinik with knees, and got the first round finish in that one. So, don't forget, Alistair Overeem's coming off of 2 first-round knockouts. You could easily forget about it because he had a bit of a rough stretch, getting knocked out by Ngannou, then he got knocked out by Blades, both 2 brutal knockouts, and then he responded with 2 brutal knockouts himself. So Overeem is not done yet. Don't be doubting the Reem yet. I think that I'm sure he's got some chin issues, and maybe if Rozenstruik catches him on the chin flush, Overeem will probably go down. But I don't think Rozenstruik has the craftiness or the MMA experience to land that shot on Overeem. I think Overeem will. Whenever Rozenstruik is looking for that big power punch, Overeem's going to either use his kicks to keep him away, or he's going to use his clinch to keep him close. And I think that if Overeem looks for takedowns, like a trip takedown or something like that, like he did versus Pavlovich, he is going to wipe the mat with Rozenstruik. I mean, Overeem is so much better in grappling. He's great from top position. He can land nasty elbows and punches from top position like he did versus Pavlovich. And if Overeem chooses to grapple in this fight, he should look like a huge favorite out there and will likely finish Rozenstruik. So I don't see this one going to the cards. I don't see the Rozenstruik catching Overeem in this one. I mean, maybe Overeem comes in with a bad game plan and thinks he can kickbox with Rozenstruik and gives Rozenstruik the range he needs, and Rozenstruik will land that bomb, touch the chin of Overeem, and knock him out. Could very well happen. I'd say the chances of that happening are more like 35 to 40%. Meanwhile, I think the chances of Reem just using his vast experience advantage and his vast skill advantage, technique advantage to neutralize Rozenstruik at range, either with his kicks at range or with his clinch in the distance, and then he will probably hit takedowns as well. So I think Overeem just has so many ways to win this fight. He can win it by playing it super smart and trying to maybe outstrike him to a decision over 5 rounds, just taking no risks and just kicking him at range and not letting Rozenstruik get close. He could take him down and tap him out or pound him out there, or he could just beat him up in the clinch, land knees in the clinch, elbows, and Overeem just has, I think, 3 ways to win this fight, while Rozenstruik has 1, and that's the knockout. So Overeem's got the more path to victory. I think he's still the better fighter at this point in his career, and I think that the Rozenstruik hype is way overrated at this point. It's kind of crazy that we're getting this good line on Overeem. So I will likely lock in some action on Overeem later as well. No bets for this card yet. Have been kind of playing it low-key this past few weeks, just not watching much MMA, and have not locked in any action in this one, but I will probably I'll run through the bets real quick. I will end up on Mitchell. I will end up on Simone. I will end up on Rothwell, Rodriguez, and Overeem. I hope I don't bet on Aspen Ladd, although minus 150 is pretty good. I think our chances are more like 70% in that one. So that'll do it for this episode. It's been a quick one. We ran through these fights pretty fast. And it's been first card in a few weeks. It feels good to be back. We got a huge pay-per-view coming up next weekend. I'm really looking forward to that one. And that'll be the next episode. So I hope you all enjoyed this episode. And once again, thank you for 2 years on the Martian MMA podcast. It's been a pleasure making these podcasts for each and every one of you. I hope you all are enjoying them. And I will catch you all before UFC 245 next week. Peace.